Today, we're going to trace a journey of the soul through the ancient book of Psalms. And we're going to do it by looking at just 5 chapters, a section that takes us from the raw pain of betrayal all the way to this unexpected, glorious vision of a perfect kingdom. So, let's dive in. It's such a complicated, but really familiar feeling, isn't it? That sharp sting of betrayal, the ache of feeling lost or alone. But then, underneath it all, there's still that little flicker of hope that just won't go out. It's a core part of the human experience. And that feeling is exactly what the Book of Psalms captures so brilliantly. You could almost think of it like an ancient playlist for the human soul, with a song for absolutely every emotion you can imagine. In this explainer, we're going to trace that emotional roller coaster through these 5 key psalms and see how they actually connect to tell one continuous story. So here's our roadmap for the journey. We'll start with the very personal pain in Psalm 41. Then we'll move into a deep spiritual longing in 42. From there, we'll see a direct prayer for help in 43. Then we'll witness an entire nation crying out in 44. And we'll end with the stunning, hopeful picture of a royal wedding in Psalm 45. All right, let's begin. Our journey starts with Psalm 41. And this one is all about sharp contrasts. It kicks off with this beautiful, reassuring promise, but it quickly drops into a really personal and painful crisis. So, on the one hand, the psalmist lays out this core principle. God shows mercy to people who show mercy. He blesses and delivers the person who looks after the weak and the poor. But then, the entire tone just shifts on a dime. The writer is sick, they're vulnerable, and it's right at that low point that they experience this gut-wrenching betrayal from someone they thought was a close friend. And the language here is what makes the pain so raw and so real. See, this isn't just some random enemy. This is a familiar friend, someone he trusted, someone who ate his bread, which in that culture was a profound sign of fellowship and peace. So that image of a heel being lifted up against him, it's just this visceral picture of a sudden, shocking attack from someone you let into your inner circle. So what do you do with that kind of profound wound? Well, the psalmist anchors himself to 2 things: his own personal integrity, knowing he's lived rightly, and God's ultimate faithfulness. It's such a powerful lesson on where you find your strength when human trust is completely shattered. And you know, that kind of betrayal from the outside, it almost always leads to a crisis on the inside. So that brings us right to Psalm 42, where the focus turns inward, to the cry of a soul that feels disconnected, discouraged, and just spiritually dry. The main image here is just incredibly powerful. A heart, a deer, panting for water. It's not just a little thirsty, it's desperate. This is a life or death search for survival. And that's the picture the psalmist chooses to describe this intense, soul-deep longing for the presence of God. And as if that's not bad enough, this internal struggle is being amplified by voices on the outside. His enemies are constantly taunting him, their words cutting like a sword, asking this one piercing question over and over again. It's designed to take that spiritual dryness and turn it into complete despair. But then, look what happens. The psalmist turns away from the external taunts and starts an internal dialogue. He literally speaks to his own soul and asks, "Why are you in such turmoil?" This is such a critical turning point. It's that moment where you choose to speak truth to your own feelings, to remind yourself to hope in God, even when you don't feel it. Now, this honest wrestling, this decision to hope right in the middle of all the turmoil, it's not a magic fix. It doesn't make the pain just disappear. Instead, what it does is it channels all that desperation into action, and it leads directly into the focused, structured prayer that we find in the very next psalm. Which brings us to Psalm 43. And honestly, this one feels like it could be part 2 of the exact same song. It takes all of that deep longing from Psalm 42 and it turns it into a direct appeal to God for 3 very specific things: vindication, guidance, and restoration. And there's a really clear logic to this prayer. First, the psalmist asks God to step in and be his judge, his defender against his enemies. Then he asks for guidance, not just for general help, but specifically for God's light and truth to come and lead him. And where does he want to be led? Straight back to the place of worship, to the altar of God, who he calls his exceeding joy. Okay, so now the camera pulls way, way back. We've been focused on a single person's crisis, but now we shift to a national one. Psalm 44 is a communal lament. It's the voice of an entire people crying out together in confusion and pain. At the heart of this psalm is a massive tension. The people all remember the stories. They know about God's miraculous victories in the past, how he rescued their ancestors time and time again. But their reality in the present moment is the total opposite. It's defeat, it's shame, and it's this overwhelming feeling that they've been abandoned by that very same God. So they basically lay out their case before God, and it's a powerful one. They're essentially saying, look, we've held up our end of the deal. We haven't forgotten you. We haven't turned to other gods. So why is this happening to us? Why does it feel like you're hiding your face? It's a raw, brutally honest complaint, but it comes from a place of deep, even if it's pained, loyalty. And right when that national despair feels like it's reached its peak, everything changes. The shift in tone here is just staggering. We leave the battlefield of lament and we walk right into a royal court for a wedding. Psalm 45 is a song of pure, unadulterated celebration. And the language, my goodness, it's just overflowing with majesty. The king is described as more handsome than anyone, powerful, righteous. The queen is glorious. She's standing there adorned in the finest gold. It's this perfect picture of power and beauty and joy. But as you keep reading, you start to get this feeling that this description goes way beyond any normal human monarch. So that feeling you get, that this is about something bigger than just one earthly king, that's because this is what's known as messianic prophecy. It's a song that's celebrating a real historical wedding, but it's layered with language that points forward to a far greater future king, the Messiah. And the clues are woven right into the text itself. At one point, the psalm addresses the king directly and says, "Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever." Well, no earthly king has an eternal throne. This isn't just a king. This is the ultimate king. He is the final answer to the betrayal, the spiritual thirst, and the national defeat we saw in the earlier psalms. His righteous, eternal victory is the final word. So, we've journeyed from personal betrayal through spiritual thirst and national defeat, all to land on this ultimate hope of an eternal, righteous king. It's a map of the soul that is just as relevant and real today as it was thousands of years ago. So the final question, really, is for you. Where are you on that map?